Okay, and we're back. Wow, I'm very loud. We're going to be talking about animal welfare for the next 30 minutes or so. And it's my great pleasure to have some fantastic guests live in the flesh on stage with me. I'll introduce them in just a moment, but I just wanted to firstly remind everyone watching online that we have a Q&A function. So you can use the Swap Card app, and I will get your questions here on my iPad. So definitely, a little bit later on in the discussion, we can come to those. So please do ask your questions, and if you can put your name and maybe who you work for as well, if you're comfortable with that, that would be fantastic. To set the scene a little bit, I think none of you will disagree that we're coming to a very interesting point for animal welfare policy at the moment in Brussels. We've got a whole new sort of refurbishment of the animal welfare policy coming up under the Farm to Fork strategy, I think by the end of 2023. But also topics like animal transport, animal welfare labeling, and just general animal welfare practices are, including in the CAP, are kind of really taking up a lot of the spotlight. So on stage to discuss this with me, we have Martin Blake, who's the Chief Veterinary Officer at Ireland's Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. So welcome. We also have, on Martin's left-hand side, we have Claire Diquet, who is a farmer at the Gone Farm, great name, in Normandy, a chicken farmer.
Chicken, yeah.
Yes.
Chicken and bees and veg.
Okay, fantastic. And then, of course, we have Tilly Metz as well with me, a Green MEP in the European Parliament from Luxembourg. So welcome.
Hi.
To start off with, I just kind of want to talk about something which popped into which we were writing about a little bit and reporting recently. Quite a political thing where the European Parliament and actually some of the Greens in the European Parliament wanted to block an incoming Commission law on antibiotics, and the Greens' attempt didn't materialize in the end because it didn't gather enough votes. But is that something that you want to tell us about? Why did you want to restrict? Why did you want to block this law on restricting certain antibiotics to human use only?
No, we didn't want to block anything. We just said that the criteria proposed by the Commission on which antibiotics should be reserved to humans, the criteria are not good. That's the only thing that we said. So we said to the Commissions we want other criteria, because the criteria that the Commission proposed didn't really allow to have these reserved antibiotics, which the WHO clearly says should be reserved to humans. That's not going to happen now. Yeah. And it's not so, because there were quite a lot, and I was quite shocked about it, fake news around the subject. Because it's not so that Greens did say we don't want those reserved antibiotics who are critical priority antibiotics that should be reserved to human beings. We did not say that they should not be applied to animals, but only when there is no other possibility to cure the animal and only in individual treatment.
Right.
So it's right. It was also a measure that we stop giving on a prophylactic way these reserve antibiotics to animals, to farm animals in intensive farming, just to a whole group and not individually. That's also something. But the main issue is that thousands of people, more than 30,000 people, are dying every year in Europe because they develop
this antimicrobial resistance. These bacteria, these harmful bacteria, kind of become accustomed to the drugs that we're using because we're using them too much.
So there was a lot of disinformation and a lot of lobbying, I guess, from different parts, because it's about money. I mean, there's a lot of pharma industry behind it. There's a lot of vets living from that. So I mean, I was quite shocked, but it's not that I would never take a measure that would let animals die. I myself,
you wanted to make it stricter. You wanted to make it stricter so that only in exceptional circumstances could these particular human medicines be used.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's also in the line with the WHO, as I say, exactly.
So Martin, I mean, the Irish government, I imagine, was fully in favour of the Commission's position on this. So do you feel relieved that this has gone through unchanged?
Well, I think Ireland was supportive of the Commission position. I think it was on the basis that it was driven by science and support from the EMA. I don't think anyone disagrees about the need to reduce the use of antimicrobials, and particularly to reduce the use of critically important antimicrobials in animal production. So I think the issue is just about, it was a different point of view. I don't think there was any major, shall we say, opposition in the context of the objectives, maybe just the process.
Okay, well, anyway, it has to be water under the bridge now, because I suppose that's happened, and it's kind of history now. We have to wait until the Commission comes up with the actual list of which particular drugs are going to be restricted for human use only. So that will be coming up. I'm not exactly sure when, and we haven't got anyone from the Commission to ask, but we'll wait. We'll wait to see when that comes out. Claire, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about to take us away from the policy world, maybe back into the real world? Tell us a little bit about your farm and what you're doing, and why animal welfare is, an integral part of what you do every day.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really important to say that I'm a vegetarian.
Okay.
And I am also a chicken farmer, which doesn't often cross very well. But with my business partner, with Gail, who's here as well, we have a small, diverse farm that is aiming to prove that you can be profitable while regenerating the soil. And one of the choices that we made was to produce pastured eggs. Which implies that we move our chickens onto fresh pasture every week in order to grow more grass. And I think one of the chickens it's a business that we love, and it's a product that is just so loved by our clients as well, because
so it's chickens, not eggs, or is it both?
It's eggs.
Eggs only?
Yeah, eggs only.
Okay.
But you have to have a chicken.
How many chickens are we talking about? Or do you have to have an egg? Hold on.
That's the famous question.
We have 500 chickens at the moment, and we have 500 more that are arriving in 10 days.
So you're about to double the size of your farm. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Well, you were just telling me about the importance of animal welfare just before we stepped onto the stage, and talking about how it's also linked to your own personal welfare.
Yeah, definitely. I think
we've
we had to do a lot of internships as well within our training, and when you're in a huge animal production unit, you kind of see that the human interaction with the animals is actually very low. It's generally just when an animal is dead, you go and collect it up, and that's it.
Right.
Whereas we interact with our hens a lot, and to have them be happy makes our lives a lot easier. Farming is not easy, and working with happy animals really increases our human welfare as well.
And what about when you were telling me about the day that these chickens get delivered to you? And I suppose you're about to have another massive delivery of chickens. Talk to me through why that's a stressful thing, not for not just for the animals, but also for you.
But for us, as well. We try and say that our hens will only have one bad day after they arrive to us, and that will be the day they go, when they leave. But they have two bad days. The first bad day is when they arrive off the truck, and they come in these towers of cages, 10 per cage. The cages are about this big. And the driver is on a schedule. He's got to get to go deliver the other 600 chickens to someone else next door. And we get thrown these chickens 1 foot at a time, kind of 6 at a time, trying to unload them.
Yeah.
And we finish. Everyone just finishes the day like. It's not a day we look forward to. The day the chickens come.
Yeah, because you're looking at the animals and you're seeing how stressed they are, and that's that's
and
just
we
not
have
great.
broken legs, which then we have to put splints on, and everyone looks at us like we're teddy bears.
Okay. Well, the question of transporting animals, and I'm not just talking about internally, even just within France, but I'm talking about more generally. I mean, we have a fantastic speaker right here next to us, the chair of the inquiry committee into animal transport. So, Tilly, why don't you tell us kind of where we're up to on that? I mean, the committee is almost wrapping up, right? And there was even a mission. I'm not sure whether you went on it. You did, yes. You were in Bulgaria, was it earlier this week? Talk us about your latest kind of activities on this committee.
Yeah, so we have a committee since we started working in September last year. So now it's going to be 1 year that we are working. But we had the COVID times, so we saw a lot of experts, we had a lot of hearings, and we tried really to make a deep but fair analysis of the situation, speaking with the different stakeholders, of course, NGOs of animal welfare, but not only. We have also to speak with the authorities, we have to speak with the transport companies, etc., in order really to find out how systematic the infringements, the breaches are of the regulation 01/2005 regarding the protection of animals during transport, and also who is responsible,
right.
Who is not doing his or her homeworks regarding the protection of animals during transport, because there are a lot of breaches. Everybody, also in the ANIT committee, in the inquiry committee, admits, okay, we have to change things, we have to better implement the regulation, but we have also to revise it, which is foreseen in the Farm to Fork strategy until 2023. We make on one hand a report now that is going to be voted, and recommendations that are going to be voted in the committee, and the recommendations we are going to make, and also for the revision of the regulation on the protection of animals during transport is going also to be voted in the plenary. So now indeed we have been on the first official mission. I came back the day before, and it was in Bulgaria, and there we were on the Bulgarian-Turkish border, because it's the main exit point on the road where animals leave the European Union to go direction Turkey, and so to the export, where they some are going to be slaughtered in Turkey, but others the road is going on to other Arabic countries, for example.
What did you see? Yes, this week.
This week we had more encounters with the official authorities, with the ministries. Right. We were on the border. We talked with the vets, important actor indeed, also regarding the checks, of course. We saw also a resting place with 65 bullets that have young bulls that have been there, came from Hungary. So we could see how the resting place also was. But I must say, honestly, there were not a lot of transport now this week. Maybe they heard that we were coming. So
even I knew about your trip. So if I found
so
it
was not a secret. It was an official mission. So, but I was also there with the NGO, and there I saw some trucks. So it was a little bit different at that.
So one of the countries which does have does do a fairly big trade in transporting animals is Ireland, and as the chief veterinary officer of Ireland, does your role kind of is your role to make sure that is happening within the scope of the EU law, or where do you touch on this kind of this industry in Ireland?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I want to pick up on something mentioned earlier,
please.
just in the context of the interaction of human and animal welfare. I mean, in our most recent animal welfare strategy, we've actually integrated the whole one welfare concept into it, to actually recognising the interdependence between animals and humans.
Yeah.
So it's so I think that is something that is becoming more knowledge about and more engaged. Anyway, getting back to the question of transport, I mean, Ireland produces a lot of animals. Its soil grows a lot of grass. It has significant advantage in growing grass. So we have a lot of livestock. So we do export animals, mostly within EU.
Right.
So we export a lot of animals to Netherlands, some extent Spain, Italy, and maybe some to France. We also have some export outside of EU, and I mean, it's our job to actually ensure that the regulations are applied, and we have assiduously over the years, methodically and incrementally increased some of the controls beyond what's in the regulations, because we have identified that there are perhaps gaps that need to be dealt with. So in the context of resting periods when animals arrive in France, we've extended the requirement for an extra hour there to incorporate the need for unload and unload. In the context of temperatures even within EU, our veterinary inspectors have to be sure that they have to check the temperatures of the journey and the destination.
Okay.
In the context of space allowance on the trucks, we have actually increased the space allowance to a certain extent.
So you're saying you're going further than the EU rules?
Based on experience and knowledge and feedback, you continue to evaluate and can we do better?
Right.
So I mean, it's not without risk. I mean, every transport of humans, transport of animals have risks. So occasionally things go wrong, and I think it's about a matter of learning from that and trying to address these things.
Do you think that the sort of EU policy direction, is that something that you kind of agree with, that actually there should be a revision, and actually maybe these recommendations from Tilly Metz's committee, should be taken on board? Or do you think are you saying that you're already going ahead of what's needed?
Well, I think some of the issues may relate to interpretation of the current legislation, particularly around temperature.
Okay.
And I suppose it's also important in relation to trying to understand, the journeys. You get feedback. Different journeys have different risks.
Right.
And I think a number of member states, including ourselves, are actually going beyond that. Some we don't export to certain places because our assessment is, during the summer heat months, there's just not doable.
Oh, really? So so you don't export to the Middle East or something?
Yeah, well,
during summer?
I mean, legally we can ban, but we can actually control.
Right.
So I mean, for instance, we rarely would send animals through Bulgaria to Turkey because of the feedback we're getting from the challenges there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we go by sea.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're now sending pigs to China, I read.
We have agreed a protocol with China to actually export, but those would be breeding pigs that they want to actually improve their breeding. So we wouldn't have any problem with that. I mean, we can export German products, but they also want pigs. So.
And those pigs are going to be in an aeroplane, or how are they traveling?
They'll be flown. Yeah. I mean, it hasn't happened yet. Yeah. So we just have to wait. We have to agree the process now.
Okay. Is that something that China? Because obviously China is suffering massively with African swine fever, so it has a huge sort of protein and pork meat sort of deficiency, or debt. It needs to, so it's trying to soak up meat from lots of other parts of the world. Is that so? Is Ireland kind of you're striking deals with China in just pork meat and other areas as well? Or?
I mean, for instance, we're not a major pig producing country, but what we have very high genetic merit pigs. So I mean, certain countries there are certain trades in those to some outside of Europe for breeding to upgrade their breeding programs.
Tilly wanted to come in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a topic which is, of course, I'm very committed in and very close to my heart, of course. But the problem is with the export outside the EU is how to. So you mentioned we try to control. That is difficult to control. Indeed, we have already problems to do the proper controls inside the EU and also to make harmonized sanctions, etc. There we need also better cooperation between the member states, etc. But outside the EU, we don't have any control really on what's happening, and we don't have any powers also to do so. And when we go back to a decision of the European Court of Justice from 2015, we are responsible until the place of destination. So, and if we don't have any impact, any control on what's happening there, for me, there would be a logical consequence to that, at least for animals to be for slaughtering. I mean,
if the EU can have no control over it in terms of pragmatic, realistic terms, are you saying there should be a ban on exports outside the EU of animals? Do you think there should be a ban?
We have to think about how we could export to other third countries if we still want to do that, because we have this overproduction. As I already said, the transport of animals, the huge and millions of animals being transported, is only a symptom of our whole food supply chain that we have to rethink. But, for example, the young farmers in Luxembourg, they said we just should export animals where we know they have the same standards regarding slaughtering, for example, than the EU. So that we have like a certification system, which we know there are, where other states, third states, are recognized to have same standards.
This is such an interesting question. But we're getting into sort of cultural questions here, religious questions. A lot of the places that these animals are going to is they're being slaughtered. They need the animals to be delivered alive, so they can be slaughtered in a halal way, for example.
No, Another measure that could have been taken, and that would be much easier, is also really to reduce the time of traveling of the animals. If we say, for example, which we are discussing right now, the maximum of hours should be 8 hours, and also considering the time passed, whatever on plane or on vessels, because right now this is not considered as transport time. So that would also already avoid a lot of things if we have more controls on the time, but also reduce it considerably.
Okay. When can we expect these recommendations to be sort of coming into the Parliament to be voted on in the plenary?
Maybe still end of this year or beginning of next year.
Okay. So we've still got a few months to kind of think about these recommendations and negotiate. Okay, so I'll be following that very closely. I just want to take a quick interlude to say, We've got one question on the Q&A, and I've just lost it by pressing the wrong button. But please do fire in your questions, and we can come to those in a couple of minutes. I just wanted to get onto the issue of the labeling, because labeling is is a big topic in the EU. It's a sort of Germany under its presidency of the Council of the EU last year was really pushing this idea of creating a kind of harmonized EU animal welfare label. So I just be quite interested to hear from Martin, from the sort of Irish perspective. Is there already? I don't actually know if there's already an animal welfare label in Ireland, or is that something that you would kind of welcome or have some worries about?
I think we'd be generally supportive. We don't have. I think if you look across Europe, different countries have done different things. We would have a quality assurance scheme into which welfare is incorporated. Okay. But other countries would have specific welfare labels, and other countries would have integrated labels as well, which should be trying to capture other sustainability issues. I think, so in general, we'd be supportive of any efforts to actually standardise. I suppose we do recognise there'll be difficulties in that there's people are starting from completely different places. Yeah. And some countries might not, might feel that where you'll get common denominator will be at a lower level than they already are at. So I think there's a lot of work to be done on that. So generally we would be supportive of providing some a welfare labelling in Ireland. Yeah. And we will be, shall we say, engaging in that space. But it won't be easy because
this is going to be something which is going to be continuing to be talked about in Brussels at an EU level, you expect?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something? I wanted to go to Claire and so if I receive some of your if I bought some of your eggs, what label would be on it apart from the legally required kind of barcode system? Would there be anything additional on the packet?
We're organically certified,
right?
Even though our system is not a classic organic system, so we worked very hard with the certifier to watch us through 1 year to really see how the animals are going. But we also say we are pastured eggs, which hasn't
eggs.
Yeah, which doesn't have any legal. There is no label for that. But I think.
So just to say that what that is a kind of circular farming system where the eggs, the chickens are moved around on this mobile kind of device. Just tell us how it works. Quite interesting.
So we've got little egg mobiles. They're built on a caravan structure where the chickens lay their eggs and they sleep. But the rest of the time they're out on grass. And they are fed outside and the water is outside compared to a classic system where the food and the water is inside of the hen house, which means that the chickens don't leave the house as much as if they've got to go and look for food. We then also move them onto fresh grass every week, so at least every week. And that means that the egg actually has a specific taste. The yellow of the egg is very, very yellow because they eat so much grass and the chlorophyll.
All right.
Causes that. So it's a pastured egg.
Yeah,
and
could be something
delicious.
that Ireland could be something with all the pasture land in Ireland could be something to
Normandy is the same.
There's a question here from a certain Dan Stevenson. So thank you very much for your question, Dan. And I think it's a great question. It's for Claire. It says. In an ethical chicken farm, how do you source your chickens? How do you make sure they don't come from places that kill male chicks? Because as we know in industrial sort of chicken farming, these male chicks, they're considered kind of useless because they don't produce any eggs themselves, so they're crushed to death pretty much immediately.
Yeah. So I think there is any time that you are producing animal products, there are ethical considerations, and we can't confirm that. It's just we can't. We always say we have having layers on the farm does an enormous amount of good for our soil, but we have made compromises. We feed them grain, which comes from somebody else turning their soil, and it's exactly the same in terms of it. We can ask, we can make choices, but even if we had to produce the chicks ourselves, we would be in the same problem. We've got this problem, so I'm unable to answer it. And our farm is a regenerative farm.
Yeah.
We try and work within ethics that are important for us. And for us, soil is the thing for us at the moment. But if anyone has a solution to that, we're up for it. But
the French government has said, I'm not exactly sure where it's up to. I'd need to double check, but they with Germany have said that they're going to ban this crushing of male chicks. So we'll have to see how that changes,
exactly.
how that changes the industry. There's no other questions coming in, which is a bit of a shame. But I still wanted to talk about a couple of other areas. We have to mention the End the Cage Age petition, which is obviously a huge thing. It's probably the thing which most sort of non-agriculture policy watchers would actually know about, when it in the last sort of year. I mean, you were quite closely involved with that campaign. Is that wrapped up? Is that over? Is that done? The Commission's already kind of responded to it. They've said that, I'm not sure which year, 2027, potentially they'll phase out cages in farming. Are you happy? Job done?
You asked
Tilly?
Yeah. No, the job is not done. But first of all, it was a great victory to have so many people, and that's the Eurobarometer says it clearly. People want to change how we treat the animals regarding farm animals, but also animal use in science, etc. And the End the Cage Age was really a big victory to have these 1.4 million signatures all over Europe. And the Commission had to react and propose something.
Yeah.
And also now in the Farm to Fork, we have an amendment that was supported in Agri and Envy, which clearly also talks about the End the Cage Age until 2027. So now it's more and more getting into the texts, and now we have to transform it really into a legislative text also, because the Farm to Fork strategy is quite great. We're still working on it, but it's still only, between brackets, a strategy. Now we have to make out of that really legislative text. But you said it at the beginning. It's really a window of opportunity right now. The Farm to Fork foresees also the revision of all animal welfare legislation. We need to also, you said it also, close the gaps, having more species specified legislation. We have to be more precise in our legislation. So it's really now a window. We just voted also a resolution on the use of animal in science, etc. So there is something happening really regarding animal welfare. And that's why it's very important, and I thank you also for this roundtable, to keep on the pressure, to talk about it, to follow up. And it's really not done. It's really not done. We have to keep on the pressure, so really that we have also legislative text and not only nice strategy, but really actions that go into the right direction.
Is anyone tasked with that in the European Parliament yet? Is that already somebody doing an own initiative report on that, or is there, is that happening already, or what's the situation in the Parliament? They're waiting for the Commission to propose something legislative, or where are we?
We have, as we say, we are working on the text Farm to Fork, where it's specified now in an amendment. We had a resolution also regarding the End the Cage Age. So there is things really happening right now, and we have to keep on the pressure, be it for the farms animal, the animals in science, etc. So there's a lot of going on to put pressure, and there we need also the pressure from the citizens, because, as I said, the Eurobarometer shows it very clearly. And let's not forget that already in the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, Article 13 clearly makes it's written that the animals are sentient beings and have to be respected. So please, let's be coherent, and the European Union should really also there function as a model regarding climate, biodiversity loss, but also, and it's all linked, like how we treat animals. And I think the pandemic shows it very clearly that everything is quite linked.
Martin, like when we think about this now, it's going to be 5-6 years talking about this End the Cage Age. The cage age is going to be slowly phased out. Well, how has the reaction been inside Ireland about that? In the policy making world, and maybe from what you've been hearing about farmers from farmers, Are people approaching this with trepidation? Do they not really think it's actually going to happen yet? What's the expectation in the air in Ireland?
Well, I'd imagine there's a little bit of concern among the farmers there. I mean, in the context of what's coming at them. And I suppose it's really in the context of a broader agenda of environment, water, climate. All these issues are coming back to the primary producer.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of actual issues. I was often wondering in the context of why within, I think it's clear, like in the context of the last while, that we haven't advanced some of the proposed, shall we say, advances in animal welfare. And I think it may have been, and just a personal reflection, that like it's quite clear that damage has been done on climate and environment and in biodiversity in the last 20, 30, 40 years.
Yes.
Whereas conversely, I'd suggest that animal welfare has actually been progressively improving. Maybe not as fast as some people would say, but animals, if you take the 60s and 70s, we've made significant progress at EU level in relation to advancing some elements of animal welfare.
Yeah.
So when it comes to pressures on farmers, maybe we've been diverting and focusing a little bit more on the environmental issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think now we have a Commissioner for Agriculture who's one of his mantras is talking about improving animal welfare. So I don't think that focus on animal welfare is going to go away anytime soon, not at the EU level. But that's interesting what you've been saying about the kind of the increased attention on it. And they were saying that there has been improvements in it as well. But I suppose now, we also need to make improvements on climate, environment, and lots of other things which are key to the policy agenda. Yeah. That's fantastic. I think we've had a really good, quite quick discussion. We had a fast pace, but we've discussed labelling, transport, antibiotics, and the cages, and we've heard from Claire about what's actually happening on her farm. I think does Tilly want to have a final word? Go for it.
Yes, I may.
Yeah.
That's very great. I just wanted to say on the labeling, I think we have to be very careful when we speak about labeling on animal welfare. Not that people now see, it has 4 stars, labeling animal welfare. We have really to look how is the method of production, a little bit like we do it regarding the eggs. And it's not because a pig has 3 centimeters more. I'm thinking of discussions that were done in Germany that the animal welfare isn't clear. So be aware that we really have to look at the method of production. Otherwise, it's animal welfare washing more than anything else.
Okay.
And just another remark, and then I finish, regarding the farm to fork strategy, biodiversity strategy, which are quite progressive. And then we look at the common agricultural policy, there is not a coherence between those. But the common agriculture, there is where the money is, and those are legislative files. So that's why we cannot support this common agricultural policy, because it's not coherent with the farm to fork and the biodiversity. Or we definitely have to revise it, which is going to be very difficult in the next years. Just not that people think, she's looking through 2 pink glasses. No, I'm nevertheless very realistic, but working on
one final. I just want to. I already sort of wrapped up, but just to give the floor back to Martin for one final comment. What Tilly Metz and also her colleague Thomas Weitz on the panel about the CAP this morning were saying. That there is this disjointed kind of thing from where you're sitting in your Chief Veterinary Officer office. Do you see that that the funds are not being allocated from the CAP to animal welfare, or do you think that there is policy coherence, at EU level and in Ireland?
I think it's a challenge, and it may go back to where all this came from and the cultures within the various departments and in the various even within our own department and the various sections. I mean, environment was central, and that's where this grew up and where it's developed, and actually where the engagement between Brussels and governments are. Whereas Sante's view on welfare, is coming in from the outside. The welfare has to actually try and integrate within our own government departments as well. So I mean, it is a challenge.
Okay.
One other thing, if I may say, I think just in the context of, more and more science is coming on stream in relation to animal welfare, and it's important, like that, that we actually listen to it. And some of the concerns I have, and maybe just going back to some domestic situations, is sometimes legislation follows science, and you're not able to actually go with the science because the legislation is anchoring. It takes so long to modify legislation.
So you need the science first. science-first approach.
Yeah.
Understood. Let's wrap it up there. Thank you so much to Martin Blake, CVO for Ireland, Claire Diquet, farmer in her own right, chicken farmer, hen farmer, and Tilly Metz from the Greens in the European Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Good meeting you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Great.